All right, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Are we there already? Yeah, let's go,
We
baby.
are. We are. We're going to continue. We're going to continue quarterback talk in rapid fire. Scale of 1 to 10. What's your confidence in Notre Dame as a playoff team with Riley Leonard as quarterback? And what would it be if Steve Angeli was the starter with no Leonard on the roster?
I mean, nothing is an absolute, so I'm not going to go 10 out of 10 here at the beginning, but it's like 9 out of 10 that Notre Dame's a playoff team with Riley Leonard. I have a hard time not seeing them as a playoff team, okay? And so it's like a 9.5. Like, I see this as a playoff team with Riley Leonard if he's healthy for 12 games. If Steve Angeli was the starter, I would drop that to 50-50. So 5 out of 10 because – like I said before, I think the ceiling is 10 wins, and a 10-2 Notre Dame team is going to need help to get in my opinion. And so, will they get that help? And what were those losses? Where were they? When were all of those different things? How bad were they? What were the wins like? There's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
That a 10-win Notre Dame team, I think, might be on the outside looking in. So it's 50-50. So that's why I got to give it a 5 out of 10.
That's exactly where my numbers are. 9 with Riley Leonard would be my confidence. 5 would be my confidence with Angeli. They will be, they would, if there's no Riley Leonard and it is just Steve Angeli, they would be in the running for a college football playoff spot. But it's essentially going to come down to how they perform at Texas A&M.
Sure.
Louisville,
Florida State
is a question. I still feel really confident
I do too.
in the Louisville game this year. But Florida State and USC. I mean, it's ultimately going to come down to those 3 games. I can see Angeli winning at least, much more confident in USC until we see what their defense is going to be like this year with a new defensive coordinator. But I feel much more confident there than either of the other 2 because you've got to go on the road to Texas A&M to open up the season. Like when you talk about experience, huge factor with Riley Leonard, obviously.
Oh my
and
gosh.
then, what it's going to look like against Florida State at home as well.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame's chances going into A&M with a quarterback who's got 19 starts under his belt, I think is what Riley Leonard has, and he's played in big games and he's done big things, right? And so I feel real good about him going in there, leading this team offensively and all that. The defense is going to shut out the noise. I'm not worried about the defense. And you got a kicker who's literally played at Texas A&M before. And so, yeah, I feel pretty darn good about Notre Dame's chances there.
Yeah,
with the starters they're going to play.
No, again, and like it essentially boils down to those games. Like Riley Leonard's ability to win those games. That's why they brought Riley Leonard in. To win games like that, to get them to the playoff. And if they didn't think that Riley Leonard was going to give them a huge leg up in games like that, they never would have brought him in. But again, like Texas A&M on the road to open the season was going to be a tough game anyway between the environment and the defense that Elko is going to throw out there on the field. But if it's Riley Leonard as your starting quarterback or Angeli as your starting quarterback, those are 2 completely kind of games. And again, your confidence that Angeli can make plays down the field and be a true, playmaker for you in that kind of game, in that kind of environment. That's why you've got Riley Leonard.
Yep. They went and got him for a reason.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way. And it's a mutually beneficial marriage. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he was a dark horse first round NFL draft pick going into his junior year and then got hurt. And now he's going to use Notre Dame's roster and Notre Dame's image and Notre Dame's everything else. He watched it happen with Hartman, right? As far as all the off the field stuff. And any quarterback worth his salt is gonna be like, I can play better than he did. And so I can take Notre Dame to the promised land. Like, why would I not do that? And then he will if he does what we think he's capable of doing, he will vault himself into the first round of the NFL draft.
Right. So one of the writers from The Athletic was down at the Manning Passing Academy, and he talked to several different quarterbacks who are down there about the transfer portal. And Riley Leonard was one of them. So here's the question that he asked Riley Leonard. Is it the norm now for a quarterback to almost expect to have to transfer at some point? Leonard responded, I think that's a tricky question because it's not something I never wanted to be a transfer quarterback. I never see myself as a guy that would turn my back on anything. So it's really hard to make the best decision for yourself while juggling the fact that there are so many people you're going to leave behind. I don't know if it really still sits well with me or any of these guys. Like none of us are like, oh, we're going to go in the portal. We're going to go and do this. It's tough. It really is. I hope that people aren't going into programs thinking, if I don't get the job, I'm going to transfer. But it's also crazy seeing all this movement and guys are having to play politics in the locker room. Start this guy in the spring so he doesn't transfer and this and that. That's a quote from Riley Leonard. So what do you think about that, Vince?
I think he's answering that about as honestly as he could possibly answer it. When he went into Duke in 2021, he wasn't thinking he's going to transfer. Like that was never even a thought. If he doesn't get hurt, he's in the NFL right now. That's how I see it. And so he wasn't ever thinking about transferring, but the opportunity presented itself and he took it. I think the mentality in 2024 is different than it was in 2021 because of the way the transfer portal is being used and because of NIL and all of those different scenarios. I don't know if any quarterback, I shouldn't say any, I don't know if most of quarterbacks commit to a school thinking that they're going to transfer. I just don't think the mentality is that. I think it's maybe in the back of their mind, like if things don't work out, I can always leave kind of a deal. But I think any kid that commits to a program is thinking, I'm going to be the guy that takes this program where we want it to go.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I don't think anybody goes in with the intent of transferring. I just think they know they've got that trap door if they need it. Now, I also think it's very interesting, his last part there, where he started talking about, we got to start this guy in the spring so he doesn't transfer, right?
Right.
I feel like the politics of everything is a very interesting topic. And I wonder how the kids, the players feel and the coaches feel and all of those different things. If I was a conspiracy theorist, I could make the argument that they're keeping Steve Angeli at number 2 right now because they didn't want him to transfer.
I mean,
right?
It's the first thing that I thought of when I saw that. It's like, wow, that's, it's like whether he intended that or not, but I mean, It applies to the situation that was going on potentially, like again,
right.
Like you could apply it if you wanted to. How much of that was going on? I don't know.
Just saying. I mean, he's right there in the thick of it. So he could be referring to a topic that he's talking about, that he's experiencing right now, or it could be a hypothetical that he's hearing other guys talk about. I mean, he was down there with a lot of other quarterbacks, a lot of them transfers,
right?
And so I'm sure he's heard a bunch of stories, but it gets you thinking.
No, for sure. And I mean, look, the situation that he's in, he had kind of, it seems like, made up his mind before the season even ended, before Mike Elko pulled the trigger and took off to Texas A&M, that he was going to go into the portal. I think that ultimately a program like Duke probably peaked with where they were and, what Mike Elko was going to be able to get out of it. And obviously Elko does go to Texas A&M, and here comes Riley Leonard. Now, there's some similarities, though, obviously, between a guy like Riley Leonard and a guy like Sam Hartman. Both performed in the ACC. Both have performed against Power 5 opponents, but they've also both outperformed what their recruiting ranking was coming out of high school. Like they both elevated that, somewhat similar to like Liza Carlin, the Notre Dame women's basketball player, who coming out at, like, we talked about the portal a little bit when I had her on the show a few weeks ago about the biggest difference when you're getting recruited into the portal is, okay, now teams have a sample size on you. They see what you've actually done against much better competition over an extended period of time. So like Leonard obviously isn't transferring because he was going to lose a starting job to anybody. He's transferring because his status is now elevated compared to when he was coming out of Fairhope, Alabama, going to Duke a couple of years ago. And it's just like with Sam Hartman, his profile is going to be raised exponentially as well because of the fact that he is at Notre Dame instead of a Duke or a Wake Forest. So there's obviously a lot that goes into it. He's going to legit have a chance to win a national championship, or at least play for a national championship, in the college football playoff that he's going to have by being at a place like Notre Dame as opposed to Duke at a very minimum. And then what you said, like his draft status, he's going to have a chance to just jack that right back up there as well, because he's going to be playing with a lot more around him. And now in an offense that's going to be, just so juiced up compared to what he was in when he was at Duke as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. This next question, Jay Lehman, he is at least a somewhat regular listener, viewer of the show. I saw him tweet this last week. Notre Dame fan. Is there a Notre Dame football player we're not talking about right now, but we will be talking about by the end of the season? And I thought this would be worthy of discussing. And I know I can see the torment on your face, because like when I threw this out to you, you were like, we talk about everybody. How can anybody even fit this bill? So this is sort of like, who's at least somewhat below the radar right now, a few weeks out from training camp, who we could be talking about in a much different light? Do you at least have some candidates we can throw out and debate?
Yeah, I think I've got some candidates for sure. I think surprisingly,
who's the first one that came to the top of your head?
We don't talk about Mitchell Evans very often because he's injured. And I think he has the potential of being an All-American candidate at tight end, partly because of what I think his stats are going to be, and I think what his role is going to be on this team, and the fact that he plays tight end at Notre Dame. I think all those things play into his favor. We don't talk about him very much because obviously he's been injured, and I think you could say the exact same thing for Eli Raridan.
See, he was going to be the tight end that I was going to say.
Okay,
like
fair enough.
Because of Mitchell Evans coming back, it's like, Mitchell Evans got to get out there a little bit in the spring, but not a whole lot because he is coming back from the injury. But I think that because Evans is coming back, there's at least more conversation on him than there is a guy like Eli Raridan, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of like Raridan was the one I was thinking about.
Okay.
Tight ends.
Fair enough. Another guy that I don't think is getting a lot of love because I think everybody just thinks he's going to be returning kicks is Jaden Harrison. I think we could be talking about him. I feel like they're going to find a way on offense to get him the football. And I don't think he needs more than 4 touches a game on average, but I think those 4 touches could be dynamic. And I think we could all be talking about Jaden Harrison and his impact offensively, not just because I think he's going to do great in the kick return game and, all of that. I think he's going to be great. But I think
purely as a wide receiver.
Yes, I think that we're kind of, and I fall into this category as well prior to the spring, but we saw him do some things in the spring because of, the fact that Jordan Faison wasn't at practice because he was doing lacrosse. He had some opportunities to do some stuff with the football in his hands offensive. I was like, okay, I don't think you can ignore the talent that he has. And I feel like he's kind of a forgotten man a little bit right now.
I think that's a really good one. I think that he might, because I didn't even think about him. I thought about 5 or 6 different guys. But again, this is hard because we do this 5 days a week.
Exactly.
And
sometimes multiple times a day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Brian's doing it. We're doing it. They're so many different guys who we end up talking about that I think it's hard to for us to truly find a below the radar type guy. But I think that Jaden Harrison, purely as a wide receiver, is a really good one, because even when he came in the door, the first thing they're saying was look, this is going to be a kickoff guy. He's electrifying kickoff guy, and he's received
All-American.
Received some preseason All-American honors. He was an All-American at the end of last season at Marshall. Now, just you do have to wonder a little bit because the level of competition, both for him and Chris Mitchell, is going to be elevated. And like how much difference that potentially makes, I guess we'll find out. But I think that's a good one from a purely offensive standpoint, because I don't think any of us have like a real idea of just how much Jaden Harrison is going to be involved in the actual offensive game plan this season.
Exactly. I think that's a huge piece of it. I feel good about it because of Mike Denbrock and who he is and all of those different things, but I am very curious to see what they do because look, they've got dynamic slots already on the team. I mean,
right.
You've got Jaden Greathouse, you've got
Jordan Faison, right.
And you got Jaden Thomas, who has been the most effective in the slot, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's his primary position, but when he's there, it's a matchup nightmare, right? And so it's kind of stacked up there. And you got KK Smith, who I believe is a slot guy. So there's a lot of bodies there. And so how do they juggle that? You know what I mean?
Well, and that's like the receivers I thought of. Again, I think that yours is probably even better by going with Harrison, but Jaden Thomas and Deion Colsey, because of the fact that you've added Bo Collins and Chris Mitchell to be outside guys, and especially Bo Collins, they're on the boundary, like with, like that's where we expect Jaden Thomas to play more. That's where Deion Colsey's best position is, at the boundary. But Bo Collins has proven much more than either one of those other two guys that he can go out and be the guy. So maybe he ends up being that. But, for that reason, it's definitely there's not nearly as much expectation on either Thomas or Colsey, I feel like, going into this season.
That's a good point. And I think because of their history, I think they're already kind of forgotten about, unfortunately. Right. You know what I mean? And they both have a ton of talent. They got a ton of talent. And if they can stay healthy and they can, fix some off the field stuff and, just check all the boxes, they could be a huge part to this rotation. There's no doubt.
DK says KK Smith. I mean, I think that's valid as well because of these other guys, unless, which I do think this will happen, like Jaden Greathouse, as we talked about before, he's not just going to play slot, he's going to play on the outside as well. So like you've got Chris Mitchell over there and KK Smith, theoretically anyway, the number 2 behind him. But is he going to get more opportunity, or like does Greathouse maybe take some of those opportunities away, like if he's out there instead? I don't know.
KK Smith he's a very talented kid, and I think his time will come at Notre Dame because they are going to lose a bunch of guys after this season. I just think he's got a lot of bodies to jump over to get on the field and be a productive member of the offense this year. It's definitely possible, but I think he's got his work cut out for him. I'll just put it that way.
Right. I feel like defense is almost even tougher to come up with some names over there.
Jaden Osbury, maybe, but I don't know what exactly his role is going to be since he's kind of playing 2 positions,
floating around all over the place. Yeah.
Yep. I mean, he's a super talented kid, and I think he can help this defense. And I think he's going to be in some sort of a rotation. But are people not talking about him? Because I feel like we are. Is your average fan talking about a Don Schuler? Because I think he's going to be an integral part of this defense. But he was getting starters reps all spring. So is he really a kid we're not talking about?
But that's also because Rod Hurd wasn't
Absolutely.
Here. So, like how much is that going to, it'll definitely impact Adon Schuler's reps or whatever he gets. But I do still think that Schuler ends up out there on the field. Like I think that there'll probably be some times where we see 3 safeties out there on the field this season. We'll see all 3 of those guys, Hurd, Watts, and Schuler out there. That's kind of what I'm thinking right now. But like Schuler, finished the spring really nicely. He gave us something to talk. Like you mentioned Osbury. What's weird to me is for as much as everyone talked about Jalen Sneed, his first 2 years, you don't hear nearly as much of that now that he's legitimately in line to get more playing opportunity this year. Like we haven't talked about him nearly as much as some of these other guys, I feel like, this offseason.
That's an interesting That's interesting. I didn't think about that. Look at you.
Mic drop. Should I just leave the show now?
Coming off at the top ropes.
That's right.
It's good stuff. I'll give it to you.
Ah, yes, I got a bell. But Josh Burnham, and I think it's funny because like I've been sitting here looking at the chat, and I saw like a name or two kind of thrown out there, but like I thought we'd see more people kind of throwing it. I think that just shows how difficult this really is because again, it's like people who tune into the shows on the regular, they've seen all these names kicked around. Like they're just that's what makes it so hard to, I think, come up with some of these guys. Unless they're true freshmen walking in the door, I think it's really tough. But like, what about a guy like Josh Burnham? I know we've said Josh Burnham from time to time, but he's got RJ Oben over there as well. I still feel like Josh Burnham can be a guy who provides at least pretty good impact for the Irish this season, in tandem out there. Not at the same time, obviously, but, on the two deep there with Oben at that big defensive end spot. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think you're going to see a rotation of about 11 guys on the defensive line this year. And it could swell to even more than that. But I think, there's 11 guys that are going to play on the defensive line. Pick one. You know what I mean? Like, I think we're at one point or another, we're going to talk about all 11 of those guys, all of them. And I think you could make a case that Burnham or Oben or, name a defensive lineman isn't getting enough talk because there's 9 to 10 other guys that are also going to be getting time. So the defensive line is a kind of an enigma, in my opinion, because there's going to be so much rotation there because the talent is that deep. They're going to go 11 deep, man. Like
I agree.
That's healthy.
I agree. Tommy's saying the Bo Show.
No, of course, Tommy's saying the Bo Show.
Yes.
People are talking about Bo Collins plenty. I think he's going to be a starter. I think we're all talking about him.
I'm surprised Salty hasn't said we don't talk about Jaden Greathouse enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and here's the other thing. I think, and I'm not saying people aren't talking about him because they're talking about him, but for all the wrong reasons. Everybody thinks Drake Bowen is going to get passed up and not be a good middle linebacker. They just all think Kingston is going to just come in and just push the young gun aside.
He has been over for a guy who had as much hype as he had coming in.
Man.
Drake Bowen, he really, all the talk is about Kingston Viliamu-Asa. That's for sure.
Which, I get it. He deserves all the hype that he's getting. But did we forget Drake Bowen and what he's going to be able to do on the field? Like,
right.
He's going to be really good, folks. He's going to be really good. You don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater because eventually those two are both going to be playing at the same time. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Exactly. I'm trying to think of other potentials like Trey or like Bubakar Traore. Again, he's been brought up to some extent, but I think a lot of it is just because people are kind of over Jordan Botelho at this point in his career. Yeah. It's still put up or shut up right now, I think, as far as most people are kind of thinking with Botelho. And so, by default, I think Traore has got some talk, but we still don't really know maybe what to expect from him this year. But we wouldn't be surprised if we saw big things from Traore just based on what we saw from him in the spring.
I think so. Yeah, the kid's a physical specimen. I mean, he's just super long, super athletic. I mean, he's going to make plays. There's no doubt about it.
Should we be talking about one of the freshman corners at this point?
Possibly. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent there. So I don't have a problem talking about them. You know what I mean? I don't know realistically how much playing time they're going to have.
I mean, the only thing that gets them any sort of meaningful playing time is if the Morrison injury goes longer than they're saying it might go, right?
Right. Yeah. I hope that they don't have to. How about that? I hope they don't have to. But I do want to see them get some playing time because if you think about what the secondary is going to look like going into next season, they're going to have to play. So I want them to get time this year, so they're not coming in completely cold. But I don't know that we're necessarily going to be quote unquote talking about them, on a regular basis.
Hossie says, "What about our big bad Aussie punter?" I mean, like I hope you're joking. I hope you're like being a little sarcastic because, like, has there been a punter who has had more hype on him than James Rendell, or the Thor, whatever you want to call him?
You're not kidding, man. Like, he stole all the thunder from the 30-year-old kicker. That's for sure.
Right.
Yeah,
no kidding.
Because he's actually going to play, which would be the difference. But I hope all the hype is legit. I really do. But I need to see him kick a couple of balls before I jump on the hype train. I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
There's plenty of big athletic looking dudes that I've seen walk on into a camp situation, at all these kicking camps, and they're terrible. And I'm not saying this kid's going to be terrible, but what I am saying is kicking and punting are not get off the bus and be impressed positions. You know what I mean? Because I can tell you right now, the most athletic looking kid is sometimes the worst, and the goofiest looking MFer is usually the best. It's amazing.
Well, look at Blake Groupie, like the guy's kicking in the NFL. And,
seriously,
he looks like Opie Taylor.
Right. I'm telling you, man, you just never know. Now, if I had the to pick, I would love for my kid to be like 6'2", 220, because he can get, all of his ass into it and get the ball going. But that's not always the case.
Let's not get into physiques and your kid and all
no,
that.
Let's go down that road again. That's not what I meant. That's not what I meant at all. But I'm just saying, like, he looks the part. There's no doubt. He's like straight out of Central Casting when you're talking about like an Aussie football player, coming over to the States to play football, the whole thing. Straight out of Central Casting. I just hope he can produce. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, bottom line is I feel like under the radar guys are just really hard to find right now.
Yes. Because this roster is so deep.
Yeah.
This roster is so deep, and we know a lot about it, and we talk about a lot of guys.
And kind of like the quarterbacks, sort of like everyone's got their pet guy, I think, who they're like more interested in the others and really, wants to see them go. And like even Gerby Lambert, like the fact that you've got a true freshman coming in, and if you polled the like the fan base, you'd probably get a very high, one, like the diehards who are watching this show. Of course, they know who Gerby Lambert is. They're watching this show. They're watching Brian's show. They're they listen to,
of course,
to Ryan, and they're paying attention to the recruiting. Of course, you know who Gerby Lambert is, but otherwise, like fan base at large might not be as up on him. But there's a high percentage of people who are obviously expecting Lambert to come right in and compete for that right tackle spot right away. Maybe he does, but he's not going to be below the radar because plenty of people have talked about him and thrown his name out there already.
He's talked about a lot by the recruitniks and all of those different things,
Yes. Salty making the point with his own sarcasm. Really? Do any of us have one particular player on whom we focus excessively? I like your proper grammar, by the way. And by the way, I don't know how I said Boubacar's name earlier. Tommy, was correcting me.
To giving you crap about
it? Maybe I said Boubacar. I don't know. Maybe it's because of the tuna, that I like albacore, that I had for lunch today. I don't know.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, I just feel like a tuna fish sandwich.
Yeah. Tommy thinks Thor is going to force 2 fumbles. I don't want my punter anywhere near a tackle. If the punter's making tackles and forcing fumbles, got a big problem. You got a big problem on your hands. I'll just say that.
Yep, that's for sure. All right, which is the bigger deal? Howard Cross and Xavier Watts getting First Team Preseason All-American honors, or Notre Dame women's basketball player Cassandre Prosper playing for the Canadian Olympic women's team?
You're not going to like this, but I'm going the football way.
You're allowed to go with I throw this out there. Open it up.
My reasoning is this. Notre Dame has had people on their women's basketball team on Team Canada in the past. It's a great honor. It's awesome, but they'd be fools not to have her on the team. So I almost feel like it's understood and it should just happen. The other guys, they deserve it. I think it is a big deal that they're there. This preseason stuff is kind of a name only kind of a deal. Like, nobody cares at the end of the year who the preseason lists were. You know what I mean? And so at the end of the day, you don't really win anything. It's just kind of a nice thing to have. And I'm like basically talking myself into going the other direction here.
Yeah, that's why, to me.
Yeah, because Cass earned it. She's actually on the team.
Like the way you're going, like the only All-American teams I care about are postseason after this season.
Yeah,
like the
100%.
Preseason stuff, it's nice, but it's basically like, oh, it's out there right now. Your preseason and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just talked myself into going the other direction.
Back the other direction.
Yep.
Well, and what I would add to that is, one, you've got an active player who is on the Olympic team, and two, like for Prosper specifically, I think it's even doubly good that she's able to play on the Canadian Olympic team, because she missed all but 5 games last season with an injury. So the fact that she is able to get back up and play at full strength is huge news right now, because that means, obviously, assuming nothing, knock on wood, nothing crazy happens while she's over there in Paris. She gets to go back to Paris, by the way, where she started, the college season last year. I just actually even thought about that. But
look at you.
The fact that she's healthy enough to play, I think, is a great sign for Notre Dame.
Sure.
When she gets back from the Olympics and gets back in with the team, because she was injured almost all of last season.
Just makes that depth chart that much deeper.
Yep. Just one more piece.
I feel bad for Niele. She's got a lot. I don't feel bad for her because she's got a Final Four roster, but that's a lot of people that deserve minutes. You know what I mean? And I don't know if there's enough to go around.
And Cass specifically, Prosper, like what she does for them defensively when she's out there with that length that she provides at the top and that wingspan, she covers so much space out there. That is just huge to be able to get her back. And that was something that was missing, obviously, for a great deal of last season. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Cal football will travel 24,000 miles for its 5 road games this season against Auburn, Florida State, Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, and SMU in its first season as a member of the ACC.
Hilarious. I think it's hilarious, and I think that is the downfall of the stupid conference expansion. And one of my friends put it very concisely: nobody forced you in there. Nobody forced you to the ACC. So don't complain. I don't know if they're complaining, because somebody else, I believe.
The alternative is you're trying to make a go of it as an independent.
The Mountain West or in the Mountain West or whatever. With the other leftover Pac-12 teams, right?
Right.
And so, this is what you get, man. Like, you made your bed, now you get to fly over it. I don't know. I think the tweet said something along the lines of the entire circumference of the world is 24,400 or something like that.
24,900.
Okay, there you go. So
yes. Fortunately, they're not making all these trips consecutively. There is,
correct.
It's there and back, and nobody's making them go to Auburn, for example.
I would love to see the travel that like the track team is going to have, and the baseball team, and the volleyball team, and the soccer team.
Everyone's going to have a lot. Like, that's just
I realize football gets the publicity. But how about all those other schools and most of our teams, those other teams, and most of those teams played during the week.
Yeah.
So, interesting.
Yeah. We haven't seen, like you're talking about basketball, we haven't seen the final basketball schedules come out this year. We do know, like from the women's perspective, they will not go to the West Coast for Cal and Stanford this year. It'll be next year. Dallas as well. But a lot of these other schools are going to be in that same boat. Like, you're just looking at them, like there are going to be a lot of others that are going to be in the same boat when it comes to those, because they're going to have to make that trip out west to play Cal and Stanford, and they're going to have to play at SMU in the same season. And, like Notre Dame potentially next year will have to go to the West Coast, to Dallas, and also to, maybe at least one of the Florida schools, either Florida State or Miami, for example. So, yeah, all these other lower revenue sports are going to have to make a lot more sacrifices because they're going to be doing it during the week as well, not just one day a week on Saturdays. So, but like you said, I mean, the alternative is you're either playing in a lesser conference or, you're doing what Oregon State is trying to do and you're independent right now. So, I mean, that's what it took to keep you kind of, among the upper echelon of the Power Four or whatever. So,
right.
Got to dance with it.
Yep.
Back to more basketball. Fill in the blank. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese making the WNBA All-Star game, which will pit the All-Stars against the U.S. Olympic team. Means blank.
This is a tough one for me because I'm trying to figure out a good way to say it within the confines of the question. It means they have an opportunity to prove to the Olympic Selection Committee that they shouldn't have been left off the team. How about that? So I'm excited. I think this is a great format because it gives these ladies who were left off the team an opportunity to shove it right back in their face. And I think that's awesome. That's what sports is all about.
Yeah. I mean, it's the two best rookies in the WNBA this season. Angel Reese breaking the record for all the double-doubles in a row, and Caitlin Clark over the weekend also. I don't know if you saw that. The first WNBA rookie ever to have a triple-double, and there was all the controversy. Caitlin Clark got left off the Olympic team. Well, now she gets to play against the Olympians in an All-Star game. So I think it's pretty apropos. It's pretty cool that they'll both get to go out there and do that. So
I think it's awesome,
yeah.
Frankly. Yeah. I actually might tune into that game. Be the first WNBA game I would have watched all year.
I roll up on some of the Caitlin Clark.
Do you?
From time to time. Yeah.
They've only won 9 games, Sean. Like, yikes. I think that's the last thing I saw in the standings.
But it's already, I believe, an improvement from what they did last year.
Well, they were picking first. So
yeah. And they've still played more games, I believe. I don't know if it's still, but at least, as of a couple of weeks ago, they had played more games than anybody else. And they'd also basically they're playing a TV schedule because the fact that they have Caitlin Clark, so they were front loading all these games against, big competition, New York and Vegas and, all these different playoff type teams. All right, Vince, when you go to a baseball game, I'm curious, where does popcorn rank among your food choices?
Pretty low, to be honest with you. It is, I'm not really a huge popcorn at a game guy. I don't know why. I think in my brain, because
you and I are both popcorn fiends in general. Like,
I love popcorn.
Popcorn, right?
I think in my skewed brain, though, popcorn is for the movies. Like, I love like too much love for the movie theater popcorn situation. So I one thing and one thing only at the ballpark: peanuts. I love shelling the nuts because it keeps me busy.
Yeah.
And it's a good snack. Obviously have like a beverage, a cold, tasty beverage. But I love shelling the peanuts, throwing them on the ground, eating the peanuts, and keeping score. Like, that is my routine when I am at the ballpark.
I was thinking about this when I was at that game in Toronto when we were on vacation a couple of weeks ago, because I saw these big old buckets, people with big old buckets of popcorn, and it looked good. But I'm thinking the exact same thing as you. It's like we're obviously conditioned for what kind of food we're going to get based on where you are. When I go to a movie, I've got to have my movie theater popcorn. Like my wife will smuggle in some of her own popcorn from time to time, but it's like I want the movie theater popcorn when I'm at a movie. When I'm at a ballpark, that's one of the last things that I want. The peanuts are a good one. I actually bought a bag of peanuts when we went to the game there in Toronto. Nachos are at the top of the list for me.
Ooh, yeah. Do you get all the crap on the nachos? Like the jalapenos and like maybe some meat, all that stuff?
As much as possible.
Do you? Okay.
Yes. Definitely the jalapenos which, by the way, when we were in Toronto, there were only 4 concessions of all the concession stands, that they had on the main mezzanine level, only 4 that sold the nachos. And we had to walk all over the place to find them.
Wow.
We asked for jalapenos, and you know what they came back with? Like the sliced, fresh jalapenos, not the pickled jalapenos, like out of a jar. So it's like raw jalapenos, basically, which I just threw away. There's no way I was eating those.
Dang Canadians.
But yeah, jalapenos are at the top. A brat. I like a good brat every now and then if I can find it, depending on where we are. But
I've had like a Philly cheesesteak at the ballpark, like that kind of, like I've done that kind of stuff before, but that's expensive, man.
You know what?
Those sandwiches are crazy.
You know what I haven't had at a South Bend Cubs game, which I hear are really good? They've actually got Philly cheesesteak nachos out there. Oh,
interesting.
South Bend Cubs game, which I'd still like to try sometime, but I never have.
We need to go to a game is what needs to happen. We should go to a game because I want to take my kids. I don't know that they would actually sit there. They would go off and do the kid stuff.
Yeah.
But I would like to sit there, keep score, watch the game, do the whole thing. So we need to make that happen before the end of the summer.
We should do that. Like within the next probably couple of weeks, we need to look at the schedule because
probably true.
Training camp starts in 3 weeks. So
let me ask you this.
Okay.
You're a movie guy.
Right.
And I don't know if I've asked you this before. And if I have, well, you can just repeat it. It's good content.
Okay.
Are you going to see the Kevin Costner Western that's out? Do you have any desire to see that?
You know what? It's funny that you mentioned that because
it's a 3-hour movie, by the way.
I know. I wouldn't say I loved Kevin Costner, but like in his prime, Bull Durham, obviously.
Sports movies are huge. Love them.
Great movie. Yeah, like all the sports movies that he was in. Went to see it like The Untouchables. I'm sure have you seen that at some point?
Long time ago. Time ago.
No Way Out. Really good, kind of underrated. One of his first big movies from the 80s. You should check that out at some point. It's like a spy kind of thriller. But I mean, and then Dances with Wolves, of course. Like that Kevin Costner, mid 80s to probably mid 90s. I was always in. I don't know. Something about him, I just haven't been as in on. Like in his
you haven't watched Yellowstone career. Either.
No, I haven't. That needs
to happen.
Westerns I like, but like a 3-hour Western with Kevin Costner,
that's a lot. And
I know
it's part 1.
Oh, that's right, because it's not even like
part 2 is in August.
I just don't know.
Like, I don't know if I kind of want to see it because there's really not a whole lot else out there right now that making me want to go see it. You know what I mean? But I don't know if I want to commit myself not only to the 3 hours for this movie, but then the additional 3 hours in August when things ramp up a little bit in my life in the fall for obvious reasons. So I don't know. I just don't know if I'm ready to go all in on it or not.
Do we know what they're doing in these Costner movies? USMA 87 says the reviews have not been great. Like, are they rustling cattle or are they
I don't know.
Cattle? Like what?
Supposedly this is like his passion project. Like this is something that he's always wanted to do. He spent his own money, like the whole thing. Like this is his, it's his baby. But I have no idea what the plot line is. I have no idea.
Yeah, like a 3-hour Kevin Costner Western just is not pushing my buttons right now.
See, Joe Allen says Tuesday $6 movie day might make it worth it. If you go to the theater in Niles, it's $4 if you go at like 10:30 in the morning.
Josh is in the same boat as me. Liked him. I don't know.
All right.
I don't know. He seems like a different Kevin, like older Kevin Costner is a much different Kevin Costner.
Well, if you watch him in Yellowstone, he is a much different Kevin Costner, let me tell you.
Okay.
No, he lacks a little bit of morals. I'll say that.
Man. Hossie says, completely fair and unbiased. He says the concession food at guaranteed rate, night and day better than the food at Wrigley.
White Sox, right?
Yeah.
It has to be. It's the only way to get anybody in the door.
Very true.
I'm sorry, but are you okay? I realize the Cubs are in last place and so are the White Sox, but the Cubs have won, I think, 20 more games than the White Sox. So what are you going to White Sox games for? You're not going for the baseball.
Yep.
So you got to be going for the concessions.
So at Cleveland, and I can't think of the name of what the actual name of the field that, used to be Jacobs Field. When we've been there to some games
Oh, sure.
with
Cleveland.
Jesse,
Yeah.
they've got this awesome nacho. It's like a nacho bar. And like you go through
Okay.
and you can get them in the helmet, like the batting helmet. And they've got like different meats, like you can get pulled chicken and beef and steak,
Wow.
whatever. You can get different meats, different cheeses, different salsas, all this different stuff, like your choice as you go through the nacho bar. It's probably the best
Wow.
nacho
That's
scenario.
like a meal. That's a meal.
It really is. It really is.
See, I could get on board with that. I'm not a huge nacho guy, but if you're gonna smother it with that kind of stuff, like now you're talking like a meal situation. I could get on. I'm not like a jalapeno guy, but if you're gonna put like steaks and stuff like that on there, all right, let's go. Got a little crunch to it. Okay.
Yep. It's really good. I highly recommend it if you ever get over to a game in Cleveland. So if the Cubs are ever in the World Series in Cleveland.
I went to one game and it was the World Series, and we made sure we ate before we went in because everything was so expensive.
I bet. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for tonight. We will wrap it up with that. A lot of good stuff in the show today. Heard from some different people than we've heard from before as well. So, all right. Training camp, 3+ weeks away. We are counting down. July 31st.
That's crazy. Here we go.
Hit the like button. And of course, we appreciate you, whatever platform you happen to watch or listen on. We appreciate it. Just keep doing so. We've got a lot more coming up as we get closer to Notre Dame football training camp. Ryan will be in tomorrow. And I'm sure that the unfortunate news of the day will come up on tomorrow's show. So tune in tomorrow. Till then, we will talk to you then on IB Nation Sports Talk.